Have you ever noticed how the most powerful people you know never justify themselves? While you spend hours explaining your decisions, defending your choices, trying to convince others that you're right, they simply act. And everyone accepts it. Maybe you've noticed this at work. Your boss makes a decision, and when someone questions it, he doesn't enter into long explanations. He simply says, "This is how we're going to do it," and everyone obeys. Meanwhile, when you try to implement something, you need to present 15 slides justifying every detail. Or maybe you've observed this in relationships. That person everyone respects, who never seems desperate for approval, who when they speak, everyone listens. They never keep explaining themselves, never keep begging for understanding. They simply are. And you? How many times today have you already justified yourself? How many times have you explained your actions to people who didn't even ask? How many times have you felt you needed to convince someone that your opinion was valid? If this bothers you, if you feel you're always on the defensive, always proving your worth, always explaining why you deserve respect, then you need to understand what I'm going to show you today. Because there's a pattern among all people who command natural respect. And it's not what you imagine. It has nothing to do with charisma, eloquence, or social skills. It has to do with something much deeper, much more powerful, and completely counterintuitive. Today, you're going to discover why explanation is the silent killer of your power, and how the most influential people in the world use something you're afraid to use: the absence of words. Let's start with a truth no one wants to admit. We live in a society addicted to explanations. Since childhood, we're taught that we need to justify every action, every thought, every decision. Why did you do that? Explain your reasoning. Prove you're right. And gradually, without realizing it, you became a slave to this need. You can no longer make a decision without explaining. You can no longer have an opinion without defending it. You can no longer simply exist without justifying your existence. But here's what no one tells you. Every time you explain yourself without being asked, you're giving away power. Every unnecessary justification is an admission that your authority isn't sufficient. Every explanation is you saying, "Please, accept my decision. See how I have good reasons." And people feel this. Subconsciously, they perceive that you're not sure of yourself, that you need their approval, that you're insecure about your own authority. Think about the last discussions you had. When did you start explaining excessively? When did you feel you needed to convince the other person? It was exactly at that moment that you lost control of the situation. Because here's the cruel truth. Whoever needs to explain has already lost. Whoever needs to justify doesn't have real authority. Whoever needs to convince doesn't inspire conviction. And this doesn't just happen in big confrontations. It happens every day, in small interactions you don't even notice. When you arrive late and start telling the whole traffic story. When someone criticizes your clothes and you explain why you chose that color. When you make a decision at work and immediately start listing the reasons. Each of these small justifications is a drop of power trickling through your fingers. And at the end of the day, you wonder why people don't take you seriously, why your opinions don't carry weight, why you always seem to be trying to prove something. The answer lies in your compulsive need to explain everything. But why does this happen? Why does explanation destroy authority while silence builds it? The answer lies in the basic functioning of the human mind. Our brain is constantly evaluating social hierarchies, trying to understand who has power and who doesn't. And it does this through subtle signals, many of which are unconscious. One of these signals is the need for justification. In the animal kingdom, the alpha male doesn't explain why he's eating first. He simply eats. Explanations are for subordinates, for those who need to ask permission, for those who don't have natural authority. When you constantly explain yourself, you're sending a clear signal. I'm not sure if I deserve this space, so I'm going to justify my presence here. And people pick this up instantly, not consciously, but at a primitive, ancestral level. Their brains register. This person is insecure about their position. Therefore, they must not have a very high position in the hierarchy. Now think of someone you naturally respect. It could be a boss, a mentor, a leader you admire. Have you noticed how they respond when questioned? They don't enter into long defensive explanations. They make simple, direct statements and stop. We decided to go this route. I don't agree with that approach. We're going to do it this way. Period. No excuses, no elaborate justifications, no need to convince anyone. And it works. People accept it because they feel this person is sure of what they're saying. But there's something even more interesting. When you stop explaining yourself, you force others to fill the void. And in the absence of your justifications, they begin to create their own reasons to respect you. It's as if your silence said, "I don't need to explain because it's obvious I'm right." And people, unconsciously, begin to look for evidence that you really are right, because they assume someone so confident must have good reasons. This is the paradox of power. The less you try to prove it, the more people believe you have it. Now that you understand the psychology behind this, let's get practical. There's a clear hierarchy in power communication, and most people are stuck at the lowest level without knowing it. The first level is the trap of over-explanation. This is where 90% of people live. They explain every decision, justify every opinion, defend every choice. They believe more information is better, that total transparency is honesty, that explaining is being respectful. But in reality, they're just showing insecurity. When you explain too much, people stop listening. When you justify too much, they start to doubt. When you defend too much, they assume you're wrong. If you recognize yourself here, don't worry. Most of us were conditioned to live at this level. But now you can evolve. The second level is economical communication. At this level, you speak only what's necessary. Your responses are direct. Your explanations are minimal. Your justifications are rare. You've discovered that less is more, that brevity is power, that economy of words is economy of energy. But there's still something holding you back. There are still moments when you feel you need to explain, still situations where insecurity speaks louder. This is an intermediate level, a necessary evolution, but not the final destination. The third level is mastery of emptiness. This is the level of the truly powerful. Here, you understand that your presence speaks louder than your words, that your confidence is more convincing than your arguments, that your silence has more weight than your explanations. At this level, you don't need to fill every pause in conversation. You don't need to have the last word. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You simply are, and that's enough. And the most impressive thing about this level is that people begin to project power onto you. In the absence of your explanations, they assume you have deep and sophisticated reasons. In the lack of your justifications, they imagine you possess superior knowledge. Your silence becomes a blank canvas where others paint your competence, your wisdom, your authority. Now let's get specific. There are 5 common situations where most people feel compelled to explain themselves, but where silence would be infinitely more powerful. The first situation is when they make a minor mistake. Most people, when they make a small error, arriving a few minutes late, forgetting a detail, making a minor mistake, immediately start an avalanche of explanations. Sorry I'm late, it's just that traffic was terrible, and then I stopped to buy gas, but the line was huge, and my GPS froze. But here's what powerful people do. Sorry I'm late. And they stop. Period. Why? Because excessive explanations for minor errors make the error seem bigger. They make you appear disorganized, insecure, desperate for approval. A simple, direct apology shows you recognize the error, but aren't desperate for forgiveness. The second situation is when they're challenged publicly. This is where most people panic. Someone questions your decision in a meeting, disagrees with your opinion in public, challenges your authority in front of others. The instinctive reaction is to explain in detail why you're right, present every piece of evidence, defend every point. But this only shows you feel threatened. The powerful person simply says, "I understand your point of view. I maintain my position," and leaves it at that. There's no desperate defense, no need to prove anything. Just a calm declaration that you heard, considered, and didn't change your mind. And this forces others to respect your position, even if they disagree with it. The third situation is when they need to say no. Can you work overtime today? Average person. Oh, it's just that I already have commitments. My mother is coming to dinner at my house, and I promised her. And besides, I already stayed late yesterday, so... Powerful person. I won't be able to today. The difference is striking. One sounds like an excuse, the other sounds like reality. One invites discussion, the other ends the matter. The fourth situation is when they make an unconventional choice. You decide to grow your hair out, change careers, buy a different car, choose an unusual restaurant. Immediately, people will comment, question, suggest alternatives. And the temptation is to explain all your reasons, justify every aspect of your decision, prove you thought of everything. But this shows insecurity about your own choice. Instead, simply, I decided to try something new. Or, it's what makes sense to me right now. No elaborate defenses, no need to convince anyone. Your decision doesn't need to make sense to others, only to you. The fifth situation is when they're complimented. Paradoxically, many people also explain themselves when they receive compliments. What an incredible presentation. And they respond, oh, it was nothing special. I kind of improvised. There's still a lot to improve. This completely destroys the compliment and makes you seem insecure. Instead, simply, thank you, and accept the recognition. Now we come to the practical part. How do you go from the compulsion to explain everything to mastering strategic silence? There's a method, a progression you can follow. The first phase is awareness. First, you need to become aware of when you're explaining unnecessarily. For a week, keep a mental or actual record of every time you justify something without being asked. You'll be shocked by the frequency. Why did you choose that brand? It's because it has good cost benefit and stop. They asked a casual question. They didn't ask for a market research report. The second phase is the 7-second rule. When someone asks a question or makes a comment that would normally make you explain, count 7 seconds before responding. This breaks the automatic pattern of over-explanation and gives you time to formulate a more powerful response. Why did you reach that conclusion? Count 7 seconds, based on analysis of available data, instead of, well, first I looked at all the numbers, then talked to 3 different people, researched on the internet, compared with what we did last year. The third phase is the mirror test. For every explanation you're about to give, ask, does this person really need to know this? Or do I just want them to approve of me? If the answer is approval, cut the explanation in half. If it's necessary information, keep only the essential facts. The fourth phase is embracing discomfort. Here's the hardest part. You need to get used to uncomfortable silence. When you stop explaining everything, people sometimes expect more information, and you'll feel the urge to fill that void. Don't fill it. Let the silence exist. Let the other person process. Let your concise response have the impact it deserves. This forces the person to accept that you won't justify yourself, and paradoxically, they begin to respect your position more. But be careful. There's a fine line between powerful silence and destructive arrogance. Many people, when they discover this concept, make mistakes that destroy all the benefits. The first mistake is confusing silence with rudeness. Powerful silence doesn't mean being rude or dismissive. You can still be courteous, respectful, present in the conversation. The difference is that you don't justify yourself unnecessarily. Thank you for the suggestion, but I'll maintain my approach is very different from completely ignoring the person. The second mistake is applying it to all situations. This isn't a universal principle. There are times when explanations are appropriate and necessary. When you're teaching, when someone genuinely needs to understand a process, when there are real misunderstandings that need to be clarified. The power lies in consciously choosing when to explain and when not to explain. The third mistake is using it as a manipulation tool. If you use this knowledge to manipulate or control others, you'll just become another toxic person. True power comes from genuine confidence, not psychological manipulation. The fourth mistake is ignoring cultural context. In some cultures and contexts, detailed explanations are signs of respect and consideration. Know your environment and adapt your approach. When you truly incorporate this principle, several things change in your life, and some of them will surprise you. First, your decisions become clearer. When you stop needing to justify every choice to others, you become more in touch with your true preferences. You stop making decisions based on what you can explain best and start choosing based on what really makes sense to you. Second, people seek you out more. Paradoxically, when you speak less, people want to hear more of what you have to say. Your words gain weight because they're rare. Your opinions become valuable because you don't distribute them freely. Third, you become more interesting. Mystery is attractive. When you stop explaining every detail of your life, people become curious. They want to understand you, decipher you, get to know you better. Fourth, your time and energy are preserved. You can't imagine how much mental energy you spend justifying decisions and defending positions. When this stops, you have much more resources to focus on what really matters. Fifth, you attract quality people. Insecure people are attracted to those who explain everything because they feel in control. Confident people are attracted to those who are sure of themselves because they recognize an equal. When you stop explaining excessively, you naturally filter the people in your life, attracting those who respect your autonomy and repelling those who need to control and question everything. We've reached the end of this journey, and now you have a choice to make. You can continue living like most people, explaining every decision, justifying every thought, defending every choice. Or you can start building a presence that speaks louder than words. Remember, powerful people don't need to prove they're powerful. Confident people don't need to convince others of their confidence. People who know their worth don't need to justify their existence. The silence I'm talking about here isn't about staying completely quiet. It's about speaking only when your words add value, only when they're necessary, only when they're requested. It's about having enough confidence in your own authority to not need constant validation from others. And if you implement this, if you really apply this principle in your life, you'll discover something interesting. People will start listening more attentively when you speak. They'll respect your decisions more. They'll seek you out more for advice and opinions. Because in a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, those who speak softly stand out. In a world where everyone is explaining desperately, those who simply are have real power. The question that remains is, do you have the courage to stop justifying yourself? Do you have enough confidence to let your actions speak for you? Are you ready to discover the power that exists in the space between words? If the answer is yes, start today. The next time someone questions a small decision of yours, don't explain yourself. The next time you make a minor mistake, apologize without elaborating. The next time you need to say no, just say no. And observe the change. Observe how people react differently. Observe how you feel different. Observe how the world changes when you stop asking permission to exist in it. The power was always in you. You were just wasting it with unnecessary explanations. Now stop wasting it. If this content made sense to you, if you recognized patterns in your own life that you need to change, leave a comment saying, "I choose the power of silence." It's not just so I know you made it this far, but so you can make a public commitment to this change. Because sometimes, declaring an intention is the first step to making it reality, and it doesn't stop here. In the next video, we're going to talk about something even deeper. How to use body language to communicate authority even when you're completely silent. Click to watch now, because what you'll learn there will completely complement what you discovered here. Remember, the world doesn't need more people explaining. It needs more people who know who they are.